Hallo Leute, ich bin Katja und ihr seht Deutsch für euch. We're gonna warm up an old classic today. Easy ways to differentiate between German genders, der, die, das, ein, eine, ein, männlich, weiblich, sachlich, male, female, neutral. That's all the ways I know how to say it. You know what I'm talking about. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you straight up. This is still a sucky topic. It hasn't changed. It won't ever change unless we get rid of the concept, which might happen eventually, but we're probably not gonna be alive for it. So for now, we have to deal with it. So I'm going to be going through all the tips that I know and that I think are good for you to differentiate genders of words that you do not know about yet or that you've simply forgotten. I will mention up top, generally speaking, the best way to know the gender of a noun is still to just learn the gender of the noun when you are first learning the word. That is a boring, dry teacher tip, but I wanted to get it out of the way. But of course, as a teacher, I'm also here to take you by the hand and make your life a little bit easier. Oh, and speaking of teachers making your life easier, by the way, let me just quickly talk about today's sponsor, Lingoda. I'm happy to say that Lingoda are still sponsoring DFE, going strong for several years. And if you don't know them yet, they're an online language schools out of Berlin that teach language classes online, German among them, with native teachers in group or private classes around the clock whenever it is convenient for you and at all levels. And since it is February and that means it's Valentine's Day next week, and that maybe means that you have a German sweetheart to romance in German, you can use Lingoda to catch up on some spoken German to gain more confidence. Because confidence is always good when you're dating. Anyway, here's the hard facts. So using my link in the description, you can get 30% off of your first month with Lingoda or off of their marathon course. The difference is that the marathon is basically a time challenge that you set for yourself of 3, 6, or 12 months. It's a bit cheaper on average and you pay everything up front, while there is also a monthly option which you pay monthly and is still cheap, but a bit less cheap than the marathon. You can also try them up front if you're not sure yet, and if you don't know if this is going to be for you, you can get a 7-day free trial during which you can either take up to 3 group classes or 1 private class to see if it works for you, if you're comfortable with it, and if it's going to help you. And if after that you do want to sign up, you get 30% off if you use my link. The cost for a group class starts from €8, which is super cheap. No private instructor is ever going to charge you that little because they probably want to eat. But with a school, you have more flexibility. So if you want to try Lingoda, go visit the link in the description, sign up for the 1-week trial, and if you end up wanting to sign up for either the monthly option or the marathon, use my code to get 30% off of whatever you end up paying. Thank you very much, Lingoda, as always, for partnering with Deutsch Für Euch and providing quality classes. And now, let's figure out these genders. So, we're going to start off at the easiest point. That's usually a good way to start, because there are actually some lists with endings that are reliably one certain gender. When I say reliably, I really mean about 95% of the time max, because it's German. Also, in defense of German, like, languages just have a lot of exceptions. So it's not 100%, but when you see these endings pretty reliably, you will be able to know what gender they are. I've just listed the most important ones for each gender because otherwise that's going to be the whole video, but you can find the complete list with examples on my Patreon, also linked in the description. Also, a little caveat, should be obvious, but just so no one gets confused, these endings also just apply to words that are 2 syllables or longer. So just because the ending I indicates female doesn't mean that an egg is female. It could be, but it isn't. It's neutral. So the most common male endings are ich, ig, as in der König, and der Honig. Ling, L-I-N-G, ling, as in der Jüngling or der Frühling. Ant, A-N-T, as in der Elefant or der Hydrant, or a word that you're probably not going to come across for a long while, but I like it, der Querulant. Jesus! Fucking camera. Okay. Female endings. Heit and Kite. As in our national anthem, Einigkeit und Recht und Freiheit. die Einigkeit, das Recht, die Freiheit. By the way, speaking of, it just occurred to me that words that end in echt, such as das Recht, usually tend to be male or neutral, such as der Hecht, das Recht, der Specht, while words that end in acht usually tend to be female, as in die Nacht, die Pracht, die Schlacht. It is der Schacht, but most examples I can think of right now are female. Die Yacht. I've never seen this rule before, so I could be wrong, but there seems to be a tendency here, which basically means if you're going to use this in your German gender guide in the future, I want credit. That's how that works. So, more female endings. Ung, U-N-G, as in die Festung, die Schlichtung, Ion, as in die Funktion, die Union, die Station, etc. Careful though, it's das Stadion, which confusingly means stadium. Das Stadion, not die. But usually Ion words are female and they're pronounced Ion, Union, Funktion, etc. Ei, as in die Bäckerei, die Metzgerei. And something that German likes to do in colloquial language, especially when you're complaining about something, you might say, was soll denn die Schreierei, the screamery? Or in English, you use the ending age a lot, like snackage, you know? It's kind of like that. You could slap an I onto every verb, basically, to denominate it as, you know, something happening so much that it now deserves to be a noun. People also do this with the prefix ge, like Gerede, was soll das Gerede? But it can also be with I. Was soll die Heulerei? What's with the cryage? And lastly, for our most common female endings, we have Schaft, as in Gewerkschaft, Gesellschaft, Mannschaft. And for our most common neutral endings, we have ment, as in das Fundament, das Testament, and the French word that is still pronounced Frenchly, das Engagement. Sounds different, but is also spelled with ment at the end, so I included it here. Now here we have das Stadium, which is mean, because it exists, but it means something different. Das Stadium means the stage something is at, the developmental stage, Entwicklungsstadium. Doesn't mean stadium, that is das Stadion, as I said before. So, Stadium is an example. Faktum is an example. There's a lot of these words that are kinda more elevated speech. Not exclusively, but. And then lastly, nis. There aren't a ton of words with this ending, but the ones that exist stand out, such as das Ereignis, das Ergebnis, das Verständnis, etc. Also, one of the easiest ones that you've already come across for sure is occupations or jobs that people have that are divided into female and male, as well as general people descriptor nouns. So if he's a runner, right, that doesn't necessarily need to be a job, but it's still a descriptor. Just like that, also in German, we have a lot of words that describe people that are really just nominalized verbs, so verbs that are made nouns. These usually end in er, like in English, runner, which then means that they're male, or they end in erin, which is the female version, such as der Läufer, die Läuferin, runner, male, runner, female. So we have this both for jobs, such as der Lehrer, die Lehrerin, der Bäcker, die Bäckerin, der Schreiner, die Schreinerin, etc. So basically you can make anything female that ends in er and is male, as well as the description words that I mentioned, such as der Läufer, die Läuferin, der Schwimmer, die Schwimmerin, der Redner, die Rednerin, etc. Oh, also there is der Zeuge, die Zeugin. Just mentioning that because it's not an er word. Der Zeuge, die Zeugin. Also, special case that you will definitely come across, a nurse is traditionally always been called Krankenschwester. So like a nun, a sister that takes care of the sick, a sick sister. And though it would be structurally logical to call a male nurse a Krankenbruder. We don't do that. It's weird. Instead, nowadays, we are more and more switching to just calling them Krankenpfleger and Krankenpflegerin, though we still use Krankenschwester as well. Now we get to the rules that aren't really rules. They're more like tendencies. So you won't find them in books usually. Nowadays, you might find them in like guides and tips, especially online. But they're not rules. They're not super reliable always, but they're really, really helpful in speech because they still work a lot of the time. So usually the ending er is male, like we just established with Läufer, Lehrer, etc. Important exceptions to this are die Mutter, mother, die Schwester, sister, and die Butter, butter. But I hope those are easy to remember. They end in er in English too, and I mean, aside from the butter, I would hope that you're aware that a mother and a sister are inherently female. So. Oh, also there's das Futter, the food, the fodder. Okay, but usually it applies, okay? En, same thing, usually male. There are some exceptions. Now, is female. There's words like der Löwe, der Hase. And I would be lying if I said there's like 3 to 10 of these. There's a few. But usually if you have to guess, a word that ends in E is going to be female. German rivers, very specific, but German rivers are female. Die Elbe, die Oder, etc. There's some exceptions to this, which for some reason seem to be clumped in the southwest of Germany. Der Rhein, der Neckar, der Main. But usually most rivers in Germany are going to be female. Interestingly enough, though, rivers in other countries seem to be male. Der Mississippi, der Nil, der Yangtze. There's one exception I can think of, which is in Russia, die Neva, which is the river that flows through St. Petersburg. That one is expressly female in Russian too, so maybe that's why. Maybe it's because it ends in an A. I don't know. Again, it's just a tendency. German rivers tend to be female. Other countries' rivers tend to be male. Days, months, and the seasons of the year are male. Der Montag, der Dienstag, der Frühling, der Sommer, der Mai, der November, der Januar. Same goes for most kinds of weather. Der Regen, der Sonnenschein, although it is die Sonne, but der Sonnenschein, sunshine, der Nebel, der Schnee, etc. Most flowers and fruit are female. Die Banane, die Traube, die Tulpe, die Rose. Most kinds of metal are neutrals. Das Gold, das Silber, das Kupfer. I can't think of an exception to these, but I'm going to say most because it's just way more likely that there are exceptions that I'm not thinking of than that there are no exceptions. Teaching this language for over 9 years has made me sufficiently paranoid to never say this is definitely true unless I have some way to verify that very thoroughly. But this next one is actually one where I do get to say that this is 100% true. Whenever you turn a verb into a noun, when you nominalize a verb, that resulting noun turns into a neutral. So, if you want to describe the act of walking, for example, then it would be das Gehen. If you want to describe the act of talking, it would be das Sprechen, das Reden. If you wanted to describe the act of going shopping, it would be das Einkaufen, etc. It's always neutral. For foreign adopted words, and I made a video about this topic in the past, I'm going to link it on the little I, but just in short, for foreign words that get adopted and not changed into German, we usually tend to go with the article of the closest German equivalent to refer to that as well. It's a bit more complicated than that, but like I said, I made a whole video on it. And we still don't know the definite gender of Nutella. This is actually, for some reason, such an important issue to German speakers that the Wiktionary article for Nutella now has a note on it that says that this article has been vandalized too often for people to still change it, because too many people came in and changed the article that is definitely correct. Is that actually true? It is f***ing true. Yeah, I just checked that again. That wasn't just somebody photoshopping it. The Wiktionary article for Nutella is legitimately locked because people kept changing it too much. You can use both, okay? You can use die and das, just don't use der. That's it. That solves the Nutella dispute. Lastly, and please don't take this too seriously, but it is true, and it is 100%, you can simply add a diminutive form to any given noun and make it reliably a neutral word. The two standard German, so Hochdeutsch, Standarddeutsch endings for this are lein and chen, but dialect supply us with a whole plethora of other ones, like in southern Germany you might find le and li, and there's a bunch of other ones too. But the standard two ones are lein and chen. So instead of saying die Mütze, I might then say das Mützchen. It's hard to translate this into English, but you know how you make children, give them cute versions, cute nicknames of their names. That's basically what you do by adding lein and chen. You do the same thing in Russian by adding ka to the end of words. It's a common thing in many languages, but the special thing about German in this regard is that when you do this, you make the word a neutral. Now, of course, you will sound absolutely ridiculous if you take this to its extreme. I hope that is clear. Although it might be appealing to just make every noun cute, but seriously, it's gonna sound weird. But if you're ever in a pinch where for some reason knowing the definitely correct gender of a word is way more important than using the actual word, you can default to this and use it. But like I've said before, just so we're clear on this, it is not a crime and it's not annoying or weird to Germans when you as a learner don't get the gender right, perfectly right. This is very much the polish part of learning German, and I understand that it's satisfying and feels better to be aware of all the genders and know all the genders by heart. And I would say do put some effort into it, obviously, because there can be misunderstandings, but most of the time, getting a gender wrong really doesn't matter, especially not to people you are speaking to. It matters, of course, if you want to come off as like professional and capable and like really good at the language, but in everyday conversation, you do not need to worry about Germans, not wanting to talk to you or purposefully misunderstanding you because you're not sure about the articles. And that is it for all my helpful tips on how to better navigate German gender and articles. I hope you find them helpful. Again, don't stress out about it too much. You can also watch all the videos that I did on this topic in the past, including the one on the Null article and my very first video on der, die, das, which is still going strong. Contains a lot of the information I have in here. Not all of it though, and I also didn't put everything in here again. Other than that, I would like to, as always, thank my lovely patrons over on Patreon for supporting DFE financially so I can keep doing this as my job. These are all the lovely people that are scrolling by. All of them are supporting DFE. If you want to support DFE on Patreon as well, you can find the link in the description that is currently also linked on the screen. Thank you to everyone participating in this. If you want to check it out, you get a lot of extras for this. You get the scripts for grammar episodes such as this one. You get additional material like the list of all the endings with examples. You also get ad-free versions of these episodes if you are a top-tier patron, which are the people in the special thanks category, because they're extra awesome. Thank you very much. And with that, that's it. That's really it. Your random word of the week is Häkeln. I learned how to do this in school and I recently relearned it and look what I made. Is it surprising? I immediately crocheted a beanie. So Häkeln, to crochet. And the tool that you need for it is a Häkelnadel. Die Häkelnadel. Tada! Bis zum nächsten Mal. Tschüss!